Welcome to another episode of This Was Supposed to Be Easy.
We've had these conversations on at least 1,000 car rides and thought it might be time for other people to join us. This is Cheryl.
And my name's Amy. And today we are going to be talking about activities that you can do, or we can do, to invite people to be friends with us. Is that how we, want to say it?
I like it. Let's bring them in.
Yes. All right. So how we can invite people to be our friend.
Yeah. So I want to say that I did move fairly recently, like in the last 8 years, 10 years, something like that. I moved to another city that was further away from my work. And at the time, didn't know anybody there. My husband knew a few people there because it's near where my father lives, and he had been ice fishing and things like that with a few people. And I now call someone that lives near us, my husband's bestie. His name is Ralph. Ralph is a host. Ralph and his wife Hazel used to own a pasty shop in Mackinac City. And I think that they excelled at that because I'm sure the pasties were great. I know this as a fact because they make them on the regular and invite us to come eat them. But B, because they love to sit down and have a conversation with you. They knew their customers and things about their customers' lives. And in fact, I've since met some of, they're retired, they sold the shop, but I've met some of their former customers because they've remained friends with them, even though those people might even live in another state. And so Amy and I were having this conversation about people that bring people together, I think. And it just became this growing idea for us that it's not always about stepping out and going somewhere to find potential friends. It could also be about inviting people into our lives, into our chaos, into whoever it is that we are as our true authentic self when we're giving ourselves permission to be human and all of that. And what could that look like? And so we thought today we might talk about some experiences we've had around that concept.
I think it's also a good concept to talk about because, there are things that we have access to just as individuals that other people might want to have access to. And what I mean by that is there are things that we know how to do, or we might have with our home, or a service almost in a way of saying we could provide for other people. Like I think of the tasks that I would like to learn how to do and people I know that know how to do them. I've often talked about wanting to learn how to crochet. And so what might that look like if I went to somebody who knew how to crochet and said like, "Hey, could you teach me, or would you teach me and a couple other people, how to do something like that?"
As you talked about crochet, I don't know why it clicked in my head like this, but I remember a time period when there was a TV show that a lot of people watched, and you could pretty easily figure out who in your sphere was watching this show because they talked about it afterwards. And I hope I don't scare anyone away, but the one I'm thinking of right now is The Walking Dead. And at the time, my daughter, through half of college and post college a little while, she lived in this beautiful apartment above a funeral home, and it was in a small little downtown, and there were people having season premiere Walking Dead parties at funeral homes and things like that. And she's like, "Well, this is easy enough. I live right above a funeral home." So like it could be as easy as there's this popular TV show and it's going to be the season finale or the season premiere. Let's have a party, a watch party, and just all watch it together. And I hadn't really thought
Absolutely.
about that prior to you. I don't know why crochet clicked into The Walking Dead, but there you go.
I think it's a very linear, maybe with a couple of hills and peaks
That's
in
how
there.
I roll.
Way to get to it. Yeah, me too. Me too. Oftentimes. I was completely tracking what you were saying, and I saw the way that you got there. It works.
Right, exactly. Well, even in high school, I actually currently do watch professional football on TV, but did not until a few years ago. But I loved myself a Super Bowl party in high school and college. Like I couldn't wait to be at the party for the food, for the lots of people, for the commercials. I could have cared less about the game and couldn't tell you until the last 3 years who even was playing in the game, right? But something shared like that is a prime opportunity to bring people into your home or a space that you have access to and not really be high pressure, right? Because there's this attention on learning the skill or just using the skill, crocheting, knitting, while you're drinking your glass of wine or watching this TV show and, everybody brought some food to eat or drink. So I love this idea of looking for opportunities to invite people in.
Yes, and I think this really works well for those individuals too. We've talked about going out and doing things to meet new people. And I know is a whole population out there that would say, Amy, Cheryl, I want to be at home in my pajamas by 9 o'clock. I don't want to go out and do something. And so this is for all of you that we hear, we know you don't want to go out. Let's bring people to you in a safe space. So if you're doing so in your pajamas, you can really enjoy that and live it up because who doesn't love a good adult slumber party, even if it means everybody goes home by 11?
Exactly. Just show up in your pajamas. We're having game night.
Yes, yes. Or you know what? Hey, we want to try cooking this new food, or everybody bring a new recipe and let's make something together that, if I'm a single person of one and I know that I want to make this dish, but there's no way to make it for one person, invite a couple of friends over and say, "Hey, do you want to eat dinner together?"
Yeah, and that could be a one-time thing, but it could morph into a cooking club. Like somebody there could say, "I want to do this at my place next month." And you could be in charge of the supplies or everybody could have an assigned part of the food meal that they're bringing. I love it.
Yes. It makes me think when my oldest was going to college, she almost considered going to one college because they had a cookie baking club. She didn't go to that one, but it was a very hard. She was like, "Oh my gosh, mom, these people get together once a week and they make cookies and I want that." But it makes me think about like I have other children in high school and a child in college, and all of the schools tell them if you have an interest and you can get two friends, you can form a club. And so I would love to say that to all of our listeners. If you have an interest, and even if you know one other person who knows one other person, start your own club. Start it with whatever your interest. If it's reading, if it's cooking, if it's baking, if it's watching The Walking Dead, if it's watching award shows, if it is crocheting or anything artistic, if it is, any of those types of things that other people might like doing too, invite someone over to do it. And if you are looking around your place saying, I would love to have people over, but I still live with my parents and I cannot do that, or I don't feel like that would be a good idea, if you're uncomfortable then asking somebody else to host it, then I would say there's little rooms I know there's little rooms at my local library that people can check out for free. So think about spaces then. Maybe it's a coffee shop that has comfortable couches. Maybe it's, I say the library, maybe it's the lounge or something at a building, but
Yeah.
you can pick different locations that all you really need, depending on what you're doing, is space to do it in.
Yeah, Amy, and I think you started to say this, whether it was like cleaning your house or whatever it is. Like I've heard my mother-in-law say in the last year several times, I've made friends with my dust. And because you and I both are so passionate about being able to be our authentic self, wherever it is, I'm going to push on the hey, if you're nervous about a messy house, if you have a house, if you are nervous about the dust, if just like let people know that you're a real person and that it's okay for them to also be human. And I think sometimes it's a gift
Yeah.
to be able to say, I know there's dust. I know there's cobwebs up there or whatever, but I didn't want that to stop me from inviting you over.
I love that. And I think too, as we're getting to know people and be engaged in activities with one another, I think that that can be a really good way to do that because again, they're seeing you in your all your vulnerableness. They're seeing you as a real person. And I think, we talk all the time about the way we make people feel. And so, or how people feel as they engage with us. And if we invite people over and we are kind and attentive and we listen to them and we're having fun and we're laughing and those types of things, they're going to remember that more so. They're going to remember that your wall or your cobwebs and,
Yeah.
floor was dusty, those types of things.
Yeah, this was a fun place to be. And
Yeah.
you know what? Maybe someone does have a big problem with the dust and maybe they might choose not to come the next time they get invited and that's okay too. I want to tell you about my husband's friend that I
Yeah.
started talking about at the beginning. My husband's friend Ralph and his wife Hazel. So one of the things that they have gifted, I'm going to say it this way, that they have gifted to us as new people in the community is connection to others by inviting us in. And so they are retired. They love to put together a good hearty meal. They might be making pasties for everyone, but they might be making what they call clean out the refrige soup. Like everything in the refrigerator soup, it all goes in while it's still fresh. Or it could be any other number of things. But what they do, and this is something I can get behind, what they do is they love to play cards. They also play cribbage against each other every morning and keep track of who wins for the
Oh,
month. And whoever loses has to do dishes the next month. It's a really cute and fun thing. But what they'll do is they will invite in couples or not couples, individuals who may not know each other outside of the direct connection to Ralph and Hazel. And so I will get an invitation. Hey, and often it's the day of, right? It's not this big, we're cleaning the house planned thing. It's often the day of, but maybe a couple days ahead, depending. And they'll say, hey, we're going to have dinner if you want to be here at 6:30. And I may or may not know what we're eating. I may or may not bring a salad or a dessert, but I'm pretty sure when I show up, there's going to be 2 to 4 other people there. And we meet each other, but there's this sense of there's not this pressure, right? There's no one person at dinner who's responsible for holding the conversation and keeping the conversation going because there's at least 6 people there. And so there's lots of conversation happening. And that's where I'm the most comfortable with that pressure being released. I love a good crowd. And for me, 6 people is enough for that. But we'll come together. We'll hang out for a little bit before dinner's on the table. We're eating dinner. We're talking together, and as soon as the dishes are cleared, out come the cards, and we play the game up and down. And that is now my favorite when I have people over game that we play. It's usually maxed out at 6 people, but you can shift the game a little bit if there's 8 people. And if there's more than 8, we literally set up a second table and, this group plays and this group plays and the winner plays the winner and the loser plays the loser or whatever. It can get to be a longer night. I have met so many people up north because of going to dinner at Ralph and Hazel's. They didn't get all the cobwebs cleaned up. They didn't do anything but have a great day together, preparing the food that they wanted to prepare and share with others. And dinner's almost always at 6:30. And they start joking around about their bedtime being 8 o'clock. And we're out the door probably by 8:30. So it's not this long event. It's dinner and a game. And then we're gone. But because of that, we've done that now at their house. But other people we've met through them, we've gone to their house and done it. I know people who summer up north, literally, summer in a campground up in northern Michigan. And I know them because they were a customer at the old pasty shop. And then they were invited to one of these dinners and game nights. And now I see them every summer. And I've been able to have them over and, hey, if you want to go fishing, we have a boat and we can take you out on the lake. And for me, that has opened the door as a guest in a way that wants me to really think about how to reciprocate that and offer it to others.
So it brings up a kind of a couple of questions for me that I would love to know your opinion on with that.
Okay.
Does it always have to be the same group of people?
No, it is maybe a common set of people that they might pick and choose between. And so let me do some quick thinking. 2, 4, 6, 8, 7, 10, maybe 12 people in general that form the six. But then there's some outliers, people that they actually, gosh, the longer I think about it, the more I'm adding people to this group. I mean, I have met store owners in Mackinac City. I have met a retired teacher who lives in Indiana. I have met someone who works at or co-owns the garden center, and her husband who owns the gravel pit, and so they both have summer jobs and don't have much to do in the winter. I've met other people that live on the lake that I live on. I've met their brother and sister-in-law that live a town over. I met this wonderful old lady who passed away during the pandemic, but she would come and she pretty much couldn't see anymore. She was in her 90s. And so, her card, she'd hold her cards up to her face, or we might tell her what Trump is so that she could remember while we were playing cards. But I learned so much from her because she grew up in northern Michigan. And because of where she grew up, she was able to literally go to elementary school at, I think it was on tribal land. And so it was an Indian school on the lake that she lived near. And so she knew how to sew beads and weave baskets in the same way that the Native Americans in the area do that. And I have this beautiful basket that she gifted me. So I know I'm rambling, but that's what you get with me sometimes. But I guess my point in my long answer to your short question, Amy, is no. It's not always the same people, but it's a collection of people, and it's often people I know now. And every once in a while, there's a new person who's brought in. And I know that it happens without me a lot of times too, right? Because it's a group they draw from.
And so I guess that would be the next part. Like, is there any hard feelings that you weren't invited a certain time around?
No, no. And I really have made sure in my words when I'm visiting with them or hanging out with them to be really excited if, they had so and so over for dinner, or if my husband calls them and they're like, we can't talk right now because we have people over for dinner. Like, I really make sure to make that clear that I love that they do this and that so many people get to benefit from it, because I would hate for them to be in a situation where they feel they have to be quiet about who they're having over for dinner because someone might be mad. I don't want that kind of drama, and I don't want them to have that either.
Okay. Yes. And I'm thinking that because I think that that's kind of one of those pieces that there is potential for feeling sad of, oh, I didn't get an invite, or I thought we were, but I think kind of even laying that out up front. And then it also does make me think kind of on the reverse that there's no hard feelings if let's say you get a call and you're busy that night and you can't.
Right.
And it's not a we're not going to do it then. It's just we're kind of going down the list and we'll call somebody else.
Exactly, exactly, and I do love that I can there are times when they'll call and Kevin will say, "Oh, Cheryl's down teaching and isn't gonna be home till late," and they'll say, "Okay, another time," and we know they're still having dinner, and other people get to enjoy it instead of us.
That yeah, I think those that's a really good idea to put some kind of parameters around the openness and almost the flow of it.
Yeah,
Because if somebody is thinking about doing this, don't get too caught up in the schematics or the rules or how do we invite somebody without hurting another person's feelings and I think that the point of it is being it's opportunities to meet new people at times, not necessarily always keeping, let's say, the same 8 people. I know
right.
we have a tendency to look at dinner parties or Friday night or Saturday night activities as if we were watching an episode of Friends and it's always the same 6 people, or we see all these sitcoms where it's always the same 8 people. And I think to say, like, those are great, those are wonderful when it happens, but if your goal is to meet new people, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, yeah, and as I think about what you're saying, I would say that I know, like, their intention to connect people, it becomes more clear to me the longer I know them and the longer I've been a part of it because I'm thinking right now, this year, it might be once a month that I would get that invite. But the first couple of years that we lived up north, it was almost weekly. And I really do think their intention was to very specifically connect us as new people that they were almost mentoring. Even though I'm in my 50s, they were being very intentional at that point in time to be a connector while also using their gift, I'm going to call it, of hosting and inviting people in.
So, taking that kind of same idea, you mentioned people you have met from attending some of these dinner parties. How do you then engage with a conversation with somebody else that you might then want to do an activity with?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I just love how natural it is and how even instances are popping into my head after I don't am not even talking about it, right? We have been invited to other people's houses. Many times now I've gone to dinner at Ralph's brother and sister-in-law's house. And sometimes at their house, it's the same other people that get invited. But sometimes I get invited up over the Mackinac Bridge to St. Ignace to a person that we met up there through Ralph and Hazel. We might go do things with her without them, right? She'll call us and say, "Hey, you want to drive up to Sault Ste. Marie and just go get a burger?" Or if she is making spaghetti dinner, she'll call more than just us. She will call Ralph and Hazel, but she'll be driving through because she lives in the Upper Peninsula. If she's coming through to go shopping in Petoskey, she'll call me and she'll say, "Hey, I'm going to Petoskey. You want to ride with me?" And so it has become with certain people that we've now almost spider webbed into things we can do with them without Ralph and Hazel, which again, I think was their intention.
I also hear something that I think is really important to touch on, and I love it. It's this idea of spontaneity, because I think too often we think there has to be this long runway of like, I'm going to plan this event and then I'm going to go to this event and then I'm going to follow up with the event. And it adds in kind of all of this pressure. But I think of even some of my friends where I've called them up if I don't want to do something by myself, or I just kind of know, call them up and say, "Hey, I'm going to go to Target or I'm going to go do this thing." And then also it kind of puts a timeline on it. Like, I'm not looking for you to give up an entire day to hang out with me.
Mhm.
I'm looking for, let's maybe go to Starbucks and Target and it's an hour and a half total. Or, it's something little short bursts where I know you and I have both talked about this. Sometimes having something for a full day or having any amount of time that we're actually available for hours and hours on end doesn't exist. And so we think we can't meet with somebody if we don't have hours to give them.
Yeah.
But what that might look like if we're giving them the little bit of time, or we're asking to meet up for the little bit of time that we have.
Yeah. And as you talk about the little bits of time and even the spontaneity, actually, I think about, because I live on a lake and I love to sit on the patio and have a fire going in the evening, as we're lighting the fire, Kevin will call Ralph and say, "Hey, we're having a fire. Do you want to come over?" And because our neighbors are all seasonal and they're just up at their cottage if they're around, we have in both directions 1 to 2 houses where if our fire's lit on our patio now, they know that they're welcome to walk over and have a seat. And that makes me more happy than almost anything I could, give you an explanation of in detail, to know that even that space in my home or extension of my home is an open invitation for people to come and sit down and start visiting. In fact, starting last summer, I grabbed one of my trays that I originally used for charcuterie, because maybe we'll do an episode about that. But I made it a s'more board. And so the tray just always has a box of graham crackers, a couple bags of different kinds of marshmallows. It has thin Reese's peanut butter cups that come in a bag, and it has Hershey bars, miniature Hershey bars. And sometimes it has a block of fudge because, when you live in Mackinac, you got to have some fudge. And every time we light the fire, I walk that tray out to the patio and I just set it on the table. And my next door cottage neighbor, who is, oh gosh, now I think she's 10. I'm going to just say 10. When I come out of my screen door, she looks up at me from wherever she is, and I'll give her the nod. And she just beelines it over to make herself a s'more. And I love, love, love that I've learned that from other people and have been able to offer that, and some of our neighbors who lived there before us and didn't know each other because there wasn't a bridge, a couple houses down, we've become that bridge where they now have met each other because our patio is a gathering place.
I love that too. I think that that is just a really neat way to be that. And I think too, as we're kind of talking about some of these things, thinking about what it is that would make you, our listener, feel connected to other people. We talked about the dinner party, we talked about game playing and things like that. But also, I know we talked a little bit about like a craft project or having a hobby. Now, you might also say, gosh, Amy, Cheryl, this is great, but I don't know enough people to invite them over to do the things. And so I want to also kind of challenge our listeners, or to even think about it, is thinking along the lines of then what it is you know how to do, or I would even say teach. I mentioned that idea of like being in middle school, high school, and forming a group and being at your house. But I would even encourage you to think about the places in your community that might have space to host you in teaching this group. So let's say you know how to knit or quilt or do crochet or do something like that. Could you go to a store that sells those supplies, and maybe one evening a week you sit there and crochet, and they put a note up on their board that there's some type of knitting circle or whatever available? Is there a community college or a art store or something that you could offer to teach a class or a demonstration in a content? And it doesn't have to be, if you want to teach a class and charge something, but maybe it's just teaching a class to get to know other people. So it's a free resources class of how to do something. And if you again say, hey, I'm not that creative type, are you good with numbers? Do you know how to do personal finance stuff? Like, what is your expertise? Because every single person has one. What is something that you're good at that other people might want to know how to do?
Love it, Amy. I love it, and I feel like that's probably the perfect place for us to wrap this up. We've had an episode about challenging yourself to go out and
Mhm.
try new things. I really am thinking of this conversation as bringing people in or inviting people in, and I'd love to know what you're thinking right now. What what ideas do you have? What talents, skills, great cooking dishes could you share? Yard space that could host some people in it? Like, what ideas do you have, or what have you experienced that you could share in our comments that would help encourage others to build on those ideas and try it for yourself? And if you have tried it or you're going to try it soon, let us know how it goes. We want to know.
Yeah, I would love to hear what some of our listeners are doing. So with that, I will say thanks for tuning in to This Was Supposed to Be Easy. Remember, the best stories are the ones we live.
Especially when there's food involved. And we invite you to join us next time as we uncover more tales and thoughts that just might change your world while we all navigate those things that we didn't expect to be so hard.
Stay curious, stay connected, and keep wondering.